He mailed his terror, and the world opened it. This is how fear learned to speak. In the late 1960s, Northern California was a region in transition, a place of peace movements, flower children, and late-night drives under endless stars. But beneath that calm, something else was stirring. A figure emerged from the darkness, one who seemed to thrive on fear. He called himself the Zodiac.
The Zodiac Killer seems to crave publicity. He sent letters and cryptograms to newspapers and the police, recounting his crimes, threatening more murders, and making Bay Area residents very edgy.
Killing wasn't enough. He wanted an audience. He sent letters, ciphers, and strange symbols, turning his crimes into a conversation with the world. And the worst part, he was winning. Tonight, we revisit one of America's greatest mysteries, not through the eyes of the killer, but through those whose lives he changed forever. The fog lifted. The fear stayed. December 20th, 1968. The night was cold and quiet on the outskirts of Vallejo, California. The kind of night you could hear every rustle in the dark. Betty Lou Jensen was 17, a high school student with a bright smile and a love for art. She sang in the church choir and talked about becoming a designer. David Faraday, 16, was her real first boyfriend, a Boy Scout, and a solid student who planned to join the Air Force. That Friday night, they were supposed to go to a Christmas concert with friends. Instead, they decided to take a short drive out to Lake Herman Road, a quiet, winding stretch popular with teenagers looking for privacy. Sometime before midnight, a car pulled up beside them. Shots rang out. When police arrived, David was found beside the car. A single gunshot wound to the head. Betty Lou lay 28 feet away, shot 5 times in the back as she ran. It was a brutal, senseless crime, with no motive, no witnesses, and no clear suspects. Investigators searched for explanations: jealousy, drugs, robbery, but nothing fit. The murders of 2 teenagers in small-town Vallejo sent shockwaves through the community. Parents stopped letting their kids go out after dark. The story dominated headlines for weeks, and the quiet California countryside began to feel less safe. No one knew it then, but this was only the beginning. The Zodiac's first strike in a reign of terror that would haunt California for years to come. And somewhere on that dark road, a conversation with the world had begun. July 4th, 1969. While most of Vallejo celebrated Independence Day, 22-year-old Darlene Farron was finishing her shift at a local diner. She was a young mother, bright, funny, and the kind of person people described as having endless energy. She adored her little girl and was saving up to open her own business someday. That night, she met up with her friend, 19-year-old Michael Mago. They parked at Blue Rock Springs Park, a quiet spot just a few miles from where Betty Lou and David had been killed 7 months earlier. Around midnight, another car pulled up behind them. The driver turned off his headlights, sat silently for a moment, then drove away, only to return minutes later. This time, he stepped out with a flashlight and a gun. He raised the light, erased their sight, and fired. Darlene was hit several times. Michael was shot in the jaw, neck, and shoulder, but managed to survive. He later told police the attacker was calm, heavyset, and wordless, as if he were doing a job he'd already practiced. About 40 minutes later, a call came into the Vallejo Police Department. The voice was low, controlled, and emotionless. "I want to report a double murder. If you go 1 mile east of Columbus Parkway, you will find kids in a brown car. They were shot with a 9mm Luger. I also killed those kids last year." When officers traced the call, it came from a payphone less than a mile from the station. Whoever the killer was, he wasn't running. he was directing. The following month, letters began arriving at Bay Area newspapers, signed with a strange crosshair symbol and written by someone calling himself the Zodiac. The killer now had a name and a voice, and he wanted everyone to hear it. On August 1st, 1969, 3 nearly identical letters arrived at the offices of the San Francisco Chronicle, the San Francisco Examiner, and the Vallejo Times-Herald. Each one of them began the same way. "This is the Zodiac speaking." In those first few words, he gave himself an identity, a title that would soon dominate headlines across America. Each letter contained a section of a coded message made up of 408 strange syllables. The Zodiac demanded the newspapers print his ciphers on their front pages, threatening to kill again if they refused. The message wasn't cracked by police or FBI. It was solved by a school teacher, Donald Hardin, and by his wife, Betty, working late into the night at their kitchen table. Their solution read, "I like killing people because it's so much fun. It is more fun than killing wild game in the forest, because man is the most dangerous animal of all." There was no signature, just the eerie confession of someone who wanted to be feared, not caught. As the letters continued, Zodiac's messages grew darker, taunting police, describing crimes in chilling detail, and boasting of future victims. He threatened to shoot children on school buses, causing parents to keep their kids home in panic. And then he started to fixate on specific people. Reporter Paul Avery of the Chronicle received a Halloween card covered in skeletons and the words, "Peekaboo, you are doomed." From then on, Avery carried a gun to work. Zodiac wasn't just murdering people. He was manufacturing fear, turning the Bay Area into an audience for his cruelty. Every new letter brought chaos. Newsrooms flooded with calls, police departments on edge, and citizens glued to the papers trying to decode the next threat. The Zodiac had transformed crime into performance, and like any performer, he craved attention. Each taunt, each cipher, each symbol, all of it was designed for one thing: to remind the world that he was still out there. The fog had found its voice, and California was listening. September 27th, 1969. A warm Saturday afternoon at Lake Berryessa, a quiet escape about 80 miles north of San Francisco. College students Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard were enjoying a late picnic near the water's edge. Brian was a law student at UC Berkeley, thoughtful, kind, and known for his dry sense of humor. Cecilia was a UC Davis student, calm, creative, and full of quiet confidence. They talked about school, the future, and nothing in particular. But as the afternoon wore on, Cecilia noticed a man standing in the distance, watching them. He moved closer. At first, they thought it might be a park ranger, but then they saw what he was wearing. A black executioner-style hood with clip-on sunglasses and a white crosshair symbol on his chest. In his hand, a gun. Around his waist, a long knife in a sheath. He told them he escaped from prison, that he killed a guard, and needed their car and money to flee to Mexico. His voice was steady, almost polite. Brian tried to reason with him, hoping to calm him down.
We had a complete lack of communications. I kept trying to talk to him, and I think he could still use help. I mean, I don't really think he knows his need. And if he could only realize his need, and he doesn't have to, if he could just call the authorities or call a health institution of some type, I really think he can be helped. He's not beyond hope.
The man handed Cecilia a pre-cut length of clothesline and ordered her to tie Brian's wrist. Then he tied hers. Once they were bound, he suddenly plunged a knife into Brian's back, then turned on Cecilia. Brian survived 8 stab wounds. Cecilia was stabbed 10 times. Despite her injuries, she stayed conscious long enough to describe the attacker to police. Every word, every detail. She died 2 days later in the hospital. Before leaving, the killer drew his symbol and wrote his message on the door of Brian's car. Vallejo, 12/20/68, 7/4/69, September 27th, 69, 6:30, by knife. He signed it with his mark, as if this was art and he was proud of it. An hour later, a call came into the Napa County Sheriff's Office.
He stated that he wanted to report a murder, and then he says, no, a double murder. They are at Lake Berryessa, about 2 miles north of park headquarters, and they drive a Volkswagen Carmen Ghia. And then with that, the officer asked him, well, where are you? And the subject said, I did it. And with this, the phone line, he left off the hook, went dead.
The same calm voice reported the attack and even gave directions to the scene. The call was traced to a payphone outside the sheriff's station. This time, the Zodiac hadn't just killed in darkness. He had done it in the light of day, in public, without fear. And for the first time, the mask wasn't just literal, it was symbolic. He wanted to be seen. He wanted to be remembered.
Well, it's used as an earth sign because Satan is supposed to be bounded into the earth, you see.
So indirectly, this symbol that was on his person was a symbol of Satan, was it?
Yes, yes. I strongly feel that that's where he's pulled this up out of, or he's pulled it out of a book or magazine where this is a symbol for Satan. I don't know.
And of course, if these are indeed ritual witchcraft murders, he presumably would be wrapped up in the symbols of Satan.
Oh yes, very definitely.
Well, now, what about the hood? He was wearing a black hood when he committed the incidents at Lake Berryessa.
The hood is also an indication of, this is what gives us a strong indication that he is using an occult type of following of murder or ritualistic killing again.
He didn't just wear a mask, he made us wear one. 2 weeks later, on October 11th, 1969, the Zodiac struck again, this time in the city itself. Paul Stein, a 29-year-old cab driver, was working his usual Saturday night shift. He was a former student and musician, known by his friends as quiet and dependable, someone who picked up extra hours to make ends meet. At 9:59 p.m., Paul picked up a fare near Union Station. The destination? Presidio Heights, one of San Francisco's wealthiest neighborhoods. When the cab stopped at Washington and Cherry Streets, the passenger pulled out a gun and shot Paul in the back of the head. He then wiped down the cab, tore a piece from Paul's bloodstained shirt, and calmly walked away. From a nearby house, 3 teenage witnesses saw everything through the window. A man in his late 30s, heavy-set, with glasses, wiping down the vehicle before strolling toward the park.
He's an absolutely ruthless, completely merciless killer. He calmly goes about his business of, in one case, telephoning the police, and another tearing a strip off the shirt of the dead body of the immediately killed victim. He doesn't get great excitement over it. He just he thinks killing is just killing. So somebody like that is going to be a very serious problem for us.
The description would later shape the infamous Zodiac sketch. Within minutes, police officers Donald Falk and Eric Zelms responded. But a mistake had already been made. The radio dispatcher described the suspect as a black male. So when officers saw a white man matching the teen's description walking calmly along Jackson Street, they let him pass. Only later did they realize the man that they had seen was almost certainly the Zodiac. Days later, a letter arrived at the San Francisco Chronicle. Inside was a piece of Paul Stein's torn shirt, unidentifiable proof. The Zodiac bragged about the murder and mocked the police, writing, "I am the murderer of the taxi driver. The police could have caught me last night if they had searched the park properly." He wasn't hiding anymore. He was showing off. The Bay Area now lived in fear. The idea that the killer could strike anywhere, rule roads, lakes, and even city streets made him feel unstoppable.
Bits and pieces of information, leads and tips from people who want to help catch the Zodiac Killer have been pouring into police headquarters here at the Hall of Justice for the last few days.
And for police, that night was the closest they would ever get to catching him. The closest they ever came was the man they waved past. By the end of 1969, the Zodiac had turned Northern California into his playground. 5 confirmed murders, dozens more claimed, and not a single arrest.
Today, a meeting of lawmen and psychiatrists from all over the Bay Area. They are weighing advice from astrologers on the theory that perhaps the killer who calls himself the Zodiac may be planning his next victim based on astrological signs.
Police from Vallejo, Napa, and San Francisco pooled their efforts. They traded case notes, handwriting samples, bullet casings, anything that might reveal who this man was. But every lead led nowhere. The Zodiac seemed to know how close they were getting, and he taunted them for it.
This latest communication from the man that calls himself Zodiac appears to be from our suspect. Our handwriting expert in Sacramento says that the writings are very consistent with writings in the past. And we are going under the assumption that it is a communication from the man known as Zodiac. At the present time, my partner and I are being literally swamped at our desk with communications from the entire Bay Area and from law enforcement agencies and well-meaning citizens who feel that they might have some clues or information pertaining to this killer.
He bragged about wearing disguises, hinted at explosives hidden around the Bay Area, and sent new letters mocking the very people trying to catch him. And then a name began to rise above the rest: Arthur Lee Allen. Allen was a former school teacher and Navy veteran living in Vallejo. He owned a Zodiac brand watch, talked openly about hunting humans, and was fired from teaching under disturbing circumstances. Friends told police he'd even joked about calling himself Zodiac. He lived near one of the first crime scenes. He wore the same size shoe as prints found near Lake Berryessa, and he fit the composite sketch nearly perfectly. For detectives, it seemed like the case might finally break. Leading the charge was Detective Dave Tashi, charismatic, sharp, and relentless. He was everything the Zodiac wasn't: visible, accountable, and human. The media loved him. Clint Eastwood's character in Dirty Harry was based on him, but even Tashi couldn't make the pieces fit. Allen's handwriting didn't match. His fingerprints didn't match. Later, when DNA testing became possible, that didn't match either. It was the ultimate frustration. A suspect who seemed perfect on paper, but impossible to prove. As the years passed, detectives retired. New ones took over, and the Zodiac faded into legend, a name more myth than man. But for those who worked the case, it never really ended. Tashi once said, "It's the case that never lets you go."
The status of the case is just about as it was. We're getting many, many letters and telephone calls and everything. There's no specific person that we suspect at this time.
Do you have any strong leads as far as possible suspects?
No, we do not. We're going through all the leads that we get, and each one has turned out to be negative. But someday, one of them will turn out to be positive. That's our hope.
And for every investigator who touched it, that proved to be true. Decades passed, but the case stayed awake, whispering from every open file. After 1974, the Zodiac's letters grew infrequent, then stopped completely. For years, silence replaced taunts, but the shadow he left never disappeared. Detectives debated whether he died, moved away, or simply lost interest. The San Francisco police kept the case file open, its pages yellowing, but never forgotten. Over time, new generations of investigators and civilians picked up where the police left off. Each letter, cipher, and fingerprint became an open challenge to the world. Amateur code breakers, linguists, and cryptographers pored over the Zodiac's puzzles. Thousands of theories emerged, some convincing, others purely fantasy.
New developments involving the Zodiac Killer and unraveling what's known as the 340 cipher. According to the San Francisco Chronicle, a code-breaking team from the US, Australia, and Belgium may have finally unlocked this riddle. It has puzzled authorities since the Zodiac Killer sent this to the Chronicle in 1969.
Then, in 2020, a breakthrough. An international team of 3 code breakers from the US, Australia, and Belgium cracked one of Zodiac's most famous unsolved messages, known as the 340 cipher. The message read,
According to code-breaking expert David Oranchek, the cipher's text includes this message. It says, quote, "I hope you are having lots of fun trying to catch me. I am not afraid of the gas chamber because it'll send me to paradise all the sooner because I now have enough slaves to work for me."
I hope you are having lots of fun trying to catch me. That wasn't me on the TV show. I am not afraid of the gas chamber because it will send me to paradise all the sooner. It wasn't a confession. It was a continuation of his arrogance, echoing across half a century. The solved cipher reignited global interest. Forums lit up overnight. People once again asked, who was the Zodiac? In 2021, a private group of investigators calling themselves the Case Breakers claimed they found the answer. Gary Francis Post, a house painter and Air Force veteran who had died in 2018. They pointed to old photos showing scars on Post's forehead matching police sketches and alleged connections between his movements and the Zodiac's crimes. But law enforcement didn't confirm it. The San Francisco Police Department quietly stated the case remains open and unsolved. In the digital age, the Zodiac has become a symbol, part mystery, part myth. For some, he's a riddle that must be solved. For others, he's a reminder that evil can hide in plain sight. Decades later, detectives still revisit DNA samples, reanalyze fingerprints, and compare handwriting using technology that didn't exist in 1969. Each new method brings hope, but so far, no closure. The killer who once mailed his words across California now lives on in data, lines of code, online theories, and message boards dedicated to chasing his ghost. Half a century later, the ciphers still whisper, and the mystery keeps writing back. Behind the headlines, the ciphers, and the speculation, there were people. Real lives cut short by someone who wanted to be remembered more than the ones he destroyed. Betty Lou Jensen was 17. She loved art and dreamed of becoming a fashion designer. David Faraday was 16, a Boy Scout who played the trumpet and wanted to serve his country. They were just kids, looking forward to Christmas break. Darlene Farron was a young mother, adored by her friends and coworkers for her warmth and humor. Her daughter was only 1 year old when she was killed. Cecilia Shepard was a college student, fluent in French, known for her patience and kindness. She spent her last moments describing her attacker so others might live. Paul Stein was a quiet man who played jazz piano on the side. He was working a Saturday night shift, one ride away from going home. For decades, their families lived with the weight of not knowing. Parents died waiting for answers. Siblings grew old, still haunted by what was taken from them. And then there were the investigators, men like Dave Tashi and Ken Narlow, who carried the Zodiac case for most of their careers. They grew older, but they never stopped hoping. In retirement, they take calls from reporters, open old boxes, look for new meaning in old clues. Tashi once said, "It's the case that never lets you go." And he was right. The Zodiac didn't just take lives. He left behind obsession, grief, and endless questions. More than 50 years later, his identity still remains a mystery. But the people he hurt, their faces, their laughter, their stories are not. And maybe that's the only part of this case we can ever truly solve. Say his name less, say theirs more. I'm Bridget, and this is the Icy Bridge Files. Thank you for watching.